The end of all anime and manga creativity is here. And it begins with MasterCard and Visa. When it comes to the manga and anime community, I understand we aren't exactly the most desirable bunch. A lot of the things we find entertaining or funny are, pretty cringe. Oh, I was bullied in middle school for watching anime. No, you weren't. You were bullied because you had the Ayaga sweater on. You were Naruto running through the hall speaking your broken ass Japanese. Now before you go furiously typing at me in the comment section talking about that wasn't very sugoi kawaii of you, understand I still like anime. Sure, it can be a little cringe at times, but I enjoy that it's cringe. It's the funny kind of cringe. You kind of just point and laugh. I've never believed there's been an art form that shouldn't exist because my own media diet is completely within my control. If I don't like something, I click away or just change the channel. So what does media consumption have to do with anything? Who exactly is this guy anyway? Why is he on my screen? Well, this is Mr. Sitan Kitney, the president of Visa Japan. What he would do is waltz right on up to some random company, ask them to remove X, Y, and Z content from their site, and if they did not comply for any reason, refuse to process the payments for these sites. Essentially acting as a form of censorship. Because it's either you play ball with me or I cut you off from the global market. There are some sites that can afford to weather that hit on account that their main consumer base relies in Japan anyway, so they don't really have to care. But then there are other ones that aren't so lucky on account that they pretty much cannot exist without the existence of a global market. Obvious, very bad thing, because now you have an unelected cabal of people with, more importantly, no accountability to me, dictating what's okay and not okay for me to consume. You're a grown adult capable of making your own purchasing decisions. I don't ever remember handing that to you. Keep in mind, it's my money that I have to earn, I'm okay with what I'm purchasing, but for some reason you have some random company that decides they just don't want to process the transaction. It literally puts you in that meme of the I consent, I don't. But believe it or not, something like this has actually happened before, just not directly with the payment processors. Let me explain. See, back in the mid-1950s, there actually existed something called the Comics Code Authority. I'm not going to bore you with all the details in what brought it into existence. All you really need to know is that it effectively acted as the comic books version of the ESRB, created explicitly to avoid government regulation. The comics codes themselves were just a rule set that all comics companies had to follow, provided they wanted the seal of approval from the Comics Code Authority. All the approval represented was that your comic book was free from anything considered to be morally objectionable, including, but not limited to, all scenes of horror, excessive bloodshed, and masochism shall not be permitted. Anyone can look at that for more than 2 seconds and see how overly restricted it is, because it essentially forces you as the writer or artist to censor your work to please someone else who isn't even your customer. But if for whatever reason your comic didn't have that seal of approval, there were some advertisers who wouldn't advertise in your book, cutting you off from a source of revenue, and there were some retailers that wouldn't even bother trying to sell your book. So although it wasn't technically legally enforced, you were highly incentivized to use it anyway. But taking a look back at a lot of these codes, you can see in 10 seconds a lot of the stuff we consume today that was based off of comic books would never be acceptable. Could you have things like Deadpool? Could you have things like Superman, Batman, Ra's al Ghul, Joker? One of the first people to work on Spider-Man at Marvel Comics was a guy named Todd McFarlane, who eventually had to leave the company due to all of the censorship that was going on within his comics. The first thing he did after leaving was immediately write a new character for his new up-and-coming company. That character became Spawn. But of course it made sense at the time why a lot of his comics wouldn't fly, because they were a lot more racy and suggestive at the time, especially with his character designs. But even then, it always really leaves the question of, well, if it didn't affect anyone else, why do you care so much that it exists? But then taking a look across the pond, that's exactly what's happening in Japan with manga and anime. They're just being censored out for completely moral and ethical reasons. Or so they try to claim. It's not like it's Japanese ethics being imposed on the Japanese, this is an American imposing their will onto the Japanese market. It's not like it's illegal to own a lot of the stuff that they're trying to block. This is being blocked for a completely moral reason, because they want to quote-unquote attract more advertisers, which is of course bullcrap on its own. Nobody swipes their card at the grocery store and thinks, wow, thank you MasterCard. And it makes even less sense for companies to care because they're a payment processor. If anything, it only benefits me that my customer has an additional way for them to give me their money. The comics codes themselves were definitely a product of their time, but what mattered is the amount of content that you therefore couldn't consume on account that somebody else just didn't approve of it. But that really starts to leave the question of why. Because at the end of the day, like, come on, they're payment processors. They don't care who the money is going to or where it's coming from, so long as in the middle they get to take a slice. Call it a tinfoil hat theory, but I genuinely believe it's because MasterCard Visa has more ties to Hollywood, and Hollywood at every turn has been losing to anime. So rather than actually trying to make a product that competes with anime, they just find it easier to just cut the anime out of the market. I actually remember an article coming out about a year or two ago where they were talking about how comics are booming, only for me to open the books on that article, and as it turns out, that's because a lot of the graphic novels that they were counting were manga. It included manga. Like, of the top 10, like 6 of them were just straight manga before the next one was like Superman. It's just a really sad thing to see because people really need to understand that some of the best media you can ever consume will always be when the artists are given free liberty to just do whatever the heck they want. Let them produce something for their hyper-specific niche community and everything comes out better. Like, we really need to start understanding that a lot of the best media is always going to end up being unsanitized, unsafe for the broader masses, because it's not meant to appeal to everyone. It's meant to appeal to very specific people. And that's okay. If it's not for me, I just change the channel.